Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, wanted to seek the blessing of Radha Madhav, Radha Shamsundar, Krishna Balaram, Bal Gopal, and Singadev Bhagwan, Radha Damodar, Jagannath, Baladishmula, Go Nitai Tulsimani, Haridas Thakur, Guru Parampara, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, and the assembly devotees. So, continuing on with the 10th canto, chapter number 74. So, the deliverance of Shishupal at the Rajasuya sacrifice. This chapter describes how Lord Krishna received the honor of first worship during the Rajasuya sacrifice and how he killed Shishupal. Having thus heard of Krishna's wonderful power, Yudhishthira addressed the Lord. All the exalted rulers and demigods follow your command, which is rarely obtained. It's an interesting comment. Follow your command, which is very rarely obtained. You accept the orders of wretched fools who presume themselves rulers. That is inconceivable. But of course, the power of the Absolute Truth is neither increased nor diminished by his activities, any more than the sun's power is by its movements. Even your devotees make no distinction of I and mine, you and yours, for this is the perverted mentality of animals. So if we are thinking I and mine, then we know better than the animals. That's an interesting way to look at that. After glorifying Lord Krishna and with his permission, Yudhishthira selected qualified Brahmins, all expert authorities on the Vedas, such as Krishna Daipanaya, Zasav, Shravyastev, Bharadvaj, Gautam, Ashit, Vashishtha, Maitreya, Vishwamitra, Garga, Parasara, to serve as the priests of the Rajasuya sacrifice. So these are extremely powerful sages. Others who were invited included Drona Bhishma Kripa, Dhritarashtra with his sons, the wise Vidur, many other Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudras, all eager to witness the sacrifice. The Brahmin priests then plowed the sacrificial ground and initiated King Yudhishthira for the sacrifice in accordance with the traditions set down by standard authorities. The utensils used in the sacrifice were made out of gold, just as in the ancient Rajasuya performed by Lord Varun. All prominent devatas and their associates were invited, and indeed they all came from every direction to the Rajasuya sacrifice. It must have been the most spectacular event of the century. They were not in the least astonished to see the opulence of the sacrifice, since it was quite appropriate for a devotee of Lord Krishna. The members of the assembly then pondered over who among them should be worshipped first. But since there were many personalities qualified for this honor, they were unable to decide. Finally, Sahadev spoke up. So Sahadev is one of the younger brothers of Yudhishthira, and he's very wise. Shri Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is indeed the most exalted person, for he himself comprises all the devatas worshipped by Vedic sacrifice, along with such aspects of the worship as the sacred place, the time, the paraphernalia. In his role as the super soul in the heart, he arranges for everyone in the universe to engage in his particular kind of work. And by his mercy alone, human beings can perform various kinds of pious activities and receive the resultant benefits. One who worships him worships all living entities. So this is really phenomenal guidance given by Sahadev. Very knowledgeable personality. Worshipping him means worshipping everyone. Therefore, we should give the highest honor to Krishna, the Supreme Lord. If we do so, we will be honoring all living beings and also our own selves. Surely Lord Krishna should be worshipped first. So this is the pronouncement made by Sahadev. Very amazing, actually, absolutely incredible. He's so emphatic in his view. Who can argue with that? So, who can argue with that? Krishna is sitting on the Rajasuya, about to be worshipped. Nearly everyone in the assembly agreed with Sahadev's proposal and loudly congratulated him. Thus, delighted to hear this pronouncement of the Brahmins, King Yudhishthira happily worshipped Lord Krishna. After bathing his feet, the king took the wash water and sprinkled it on his head, and his wives, younger brothers, ministers, relatives also sprinkled that water on their heads. That water purifies the whole world. As he honored the Lord with presentations of yellow silken garments and precious jeweled ornaments, the king's tear-filled eyes prevented him from looking directly at the Lord. When they saw Lord Krishna thus honored, nearly everyone shouted, "Oh, victory, Jai, Jai," and bowed down to Lord Krishna as flowers rained down from above. There's always somebody, though. Shishupal, however, could not tolerate hearing the glorification of Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities and the worship and glorification of Sri Krishna. He stood up from his seat, harshly rebuking the wise elders for choosing Krishna to be worshipped first. And he spoke the following words against the Supreme Lord. Time is the unavoidable controller of all, has indeed proven true, since the intelligence of the wise elders has now become diverted by words of a mere boy. Now, Krishna at this time, he was, what was his age at this time? He must have been 70 or something like that by this time. I think so. Maybe I'm a bit wrong with that. Anyway, he wasn't a mere boy anymore. But there were sages present who were senior to him. If you look at the time scale of when Lord Krishna appeared in this world, he doesn't take birth like we do. He appears. So there were sages who were much older than him. So this is what Shishupal is aiming at. O leaders of the assembly, you should not heed the words of a child when he claims that Krishna deserves to be worshipped. So Sahadev is regarded to be a child here. How can you pass over the most exalted members of this assembly, topmost sages? Right? We saw the names of Vyasadeva was there, Bharadwaj, so many amazing sages were there. How does this cowherd boy, he's only a cowherd boy, the disgrace of his family, because he ran away from the battle. How does he deserve your worship? How does one who follows no principles of the social and spiritual orders or of family ethics, who has been excluded from all religious duties, who behaves whimsically, who has no good qualities, how can such a person deserve to be worshipped? So, Yayati cursed the dynasty of the Yadavs, and ever since they have been ostracized by honest men. and addicted to liquor, how does Krishna deserve to be worshipped? These Yadavs, so that's Krishna's family, Yadus, have abandoned the holy lands inhabited by saintly sages and have instead taken shelter of a fortress in the sea, Dwaka, a place where no Brahminical principles are observed. There, just like thieves, they harass their subjects. So he's insulting Krishna, and he's insulting everybody around surrounding Krishna. So Shishupal, he was the son, he was Krishna's cousin. His auntie, Krishna's auntie, bore Shishupal. And at a young age, Shishupal, Krishna had told his auntie that I am going to be the one who's going to finish off your son. And his auntie implored him, please don't do that. And Krishna said, okay, no worries. I will tolerate 100 insults or from him. I will tolerate 100 insults. So here Shishupal is using up his insults, one after the other. Even as Shishupal continued to blaspheme in this way, Lord Krishna remained silent. So Krishna was just counting how many insults. Many members of the assembly, however, covered their ears and quickly left the hall, angrily cursing the king of Shedi. Anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Lord or his faithful devotees will certainly fall down. So this is an interesting point. If a devotee or Krishna or the Supreme Lord is being criticized, either we take up the challenge of meeting that criticism, we counteract it, or we leave that place. We should not remain there silent. That's not good. That means we are also participating in that offense that is being taking place. Silence means you're agreeing with the comments. But if you're not silent and you're fighting back, obviously you're challenging those comments. The Pandav brothers raised their weapons and prepared to kill Shishupal. Undaunted, Shishupal then took up his sword and continued to hurl insults at those who sided with Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, however, stopped them from attacking. He knew there was a greater plan. Wait until he has used up all his insults. Instead, Krishna used his Sudarshan Chakra, Sudarshan disc, to decapitate the offender. So, when the 100th offensive words came out of the mouth of Shishupal, Krishna immediately acted. When Shishupal was thus killed, a great roar and howl went up from the crowd. Taking advantage of that disturbance, the few kings who were supporters of Shishupal quickly left this assembly out of fear for their lives. At that moment, an effulgent spark of light rose out of Shishupal's dead body and entered the transcendental body of Lord Krishna. Having lived through these births as the enemy of the Lord, Shishupal now attained the liberation of Sayuja, merging into him by dint of his constant meditation on him. So this is the interesting painting here. Shishupal is being killed. His soul merges into Krishna. Shishupal actually was one of the devotees, J, who was sent to this earth to fight with God because of the curse of the 4 Kumaras. So he's actually a devotee, and he's going back to his original position. Another thing we can understand about Krishna from this pastime is that he liberates Shishupal, because Shishupal's insults were not taken as insults by Krishna. Krishna is the only personality who can turn insults into compliments. So every insult that Shishupal was thinking he was throwing at Krishna was actually a compliment. Krishna took those insults as compliment. So this was a very interesting situation. This is another interesting painting. His head is chopped off. So what are these liberations, right? Salokya is where one resides with this Lord Narayan in his planet. Samipya, become an associate of the Lord. Sarupya, attain a 400 form exactly that, like that of the Lord. Shastri, Shashti, obtaining opulences like those of the Lord. And then the Sayujya, merging into the Brahman effulgence. Now, that last one is not really regarded as a type of liberation because merging with the Lord is not desirable. Because that effectively means I want to become God. And that is not accepted actually in the Vaishnav tradition. Anyway, he would have attained this four-handed form, exactly like that of the Lord, because he would have gone back to his original position as doorkeeper. So maybe for a little time, he's merged with the Lord, but then ultimately he would be given back his original position. King Yudhishthira then distributed profuse gifts to the respected guests of the assembly and to the priests, and finally executed the purificatory oblations known as the Prayashchit Homa, which counteracts errors made during the sacrifice. Now, there was obviously the killing of Shishupal is perhaps regarded as inauspicious, although it isn't. It is auspicious because it was done by the Lord. But this Prayashchit Homa deals with any errors made, any deficiencies in the yajna sacrifice. Yudhishthira's Rajasuya was successful. After staying for a few months, Lord Krishna took his leave from the king, set off for Dwarka in the company of his wives and ministers. Everyone was very happy. Of course, there was somebody, and there's always somebody, who was envious. And that, in this case, is Duryodhan. So chapter 75 deals with Duryodhan. This chapter describes the glorious conclusion of the Rajasuya sacrifice and how Prince Duryodhan was humiliated in King Yudhishthira's palace. Maharaj Parikshit wondered why, when all the assembled kings, sages, and demigods were delighted to see the wonderful festivities of the Rajasuya sacrifice, Duryodhan was the sole exception. Because at the end of the last chapter, Shukadev Goswami explained, Duryodhan was envious. He wasn't happy. At the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice, many of his relatives and well-wishers endeavored to please him by performing necessary services. So what did they do? Bhim supervised the kitchen. Duryodhan looked after the treasury. Sahadev respectfully greeted the arriving guests. Nakul procured needed items. Arjun attended the respectable elders. Krishna washed everyone's feet. Humility of God. He is so humble. He's so humble. He washed everybody's feet. He took the position of chariot driver for Arjun in the battle of Kurukshetra. Later on, we'll see that. He's so humble. And this is one of the reasons why humility is such a strength and important aspect of our spiritual development. Because Krishna loves those who are humble, because he is himself humble, even though he is It's the supreme controller. He rules. He's all-knowing. He's present everywhere, all-powerful. But yet, he's humble. So he likes those who are humble. While Draupadi served food and generous Kern gave out gifts. When the sacrifice was complete, the king adorned the priests, the exalted members of the assembly, and his own relatives with fragrant sandalwood paste, flower garlands, and fine clothing. Then they all went to the banks of the Yamuna to perform the ritual bathing that marks the end of the sponsor's period of initiation for the sacrifice. Before the final bathing, there was much sporting in the river amongst the male and female participants. Surrounded by guards, King Yudhishthira's queens came out of their chariots to see the fun. Just as demigods' wives appeared in the sky in celestial airplanes. As maternal cousins and intimate friends sprinkled the queens with liquids, the ladies' faces bloomed with shy smiles, enhancing the queen's splendid beauty, their faces shining with bashful laughter. In their excitement, the flowers fell from their loosened braids. By these charming pastimes, they agitated those with contaminated consciousness. Yeah, so when somebody sees these activities, they can become lusty if they are not pure in their consciousness. So this consciousness is a very important thing to mold so that our consciousness becomes pure. And when we see something which we maybe should not see, or hear something which we should not hear, we won't get agitated. And this is what spiritual life is all about, to try to control the mind, try to improve the consciousness. After the priests had executed the final rituals, the king and his queen, Srimati Draupadi, bathed in the Yamuna. Then all those present who belonged to the order of Varnashram bathed. Yudhishthira put on new clothes and worshipped the learned Brahmins, his family, friends, and well-wishers, each in a particular manner suitable for them, offered them all various gifts. The guests then departed for their homes. But King Yudhishthira was so anxious about his imminent separation from those who were dear to him that he compelled several of his relatives and closest friends, including Lord Krishna, to remain in Indraprastha a little longer. So the Lord remained there for some time to please the king. After first sending Samba and the other Yadu heroes back to Dwarka. Thus, King Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, was at last relieved of his burning ambition, having, by the grace of Lord Krishna, successfully crossed the vast and formidable ocean of his desires. One day, so this is the crux now, Duryodhana, while observing the riches of King Yudhishthira's palace, felt greatly disturbed by the magnificence of both the Rajasuya sacrifice and its performer, the king, King Yudhishthira. He was shocked. Indraprastha was nothing. It was just some barren land. And Yudhishthira and his brothers have converted it into a glorious place, far better than Hastinapur. So this led to envy. King Yudhishthira's royal palace had been constructed by Mayadavana, who had endowed it with many wonderful features and opulences. King Duryodhana burned with envy when he saw these riches. So when somebody doesn't like another person, they will just find fault. And here, Duryodhana became very envious because he didn't like Yudhishthira anyway. And seeing Yudhishthira with so much wealth gave him heartache. One day, Yudhishthira was seated with Lord Krishna in the royal assembly hall, attended by his subordinates and family members. He was manifesting magnificence equal to that of Lord Indra. At that time, Duryodhana entered the hall in a fitful mood, bewildered by the mystic craft of Maya Davana. Duryodhana mistook parts of the solid floor for water and thus lifted his garment. So solid floor, he thought it was water. So he lifted his garment to walk past, but it was just a solid floor. However, in one place, he fell into the water. It looked like solid floor, but when he walked on it, it was water and he fell into it because he mistook it for a solid floor. When Bhishma Sen, the ladies of the court and the royal princes present saw this, they began to laugh, completely humiliating Duryodhana. Maharaj Yudhishthira tried to stop them, but Lord Krishna encouraged their laughter. Yeah, he encouraged their laughter. Why did he encourage the laughter? Because he knew Duryodhana at heart was always going to be envious. So he wanted to make things happen quickly so that the war of Kurukshetra can take place. So one of the reasons why Krishna encouraged them to laugh was to make that humiliation of Duryodhana so devastating for Duryodhana that it would lead to war. Thoroughly embarrassed, Duryodhana left the assembly hall in a fury, immediately departed for Hastinapur. There you go. He thought it was solid floor and it was water. He fell into it. Okay, so let's stop there. Any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Naniven. Hare Krishna.
Yes, somebody said that the laughter episode did not happen.
Some saying that, yes.
Yes, some said that. So
Yeah. Some say that, but in the Bhagavatam, it's quite clearly stated it did happen. Also, some say that it was Draupadi who made some comment how a blind man's son is always blind.
Yes.
That really wound up Duryodhana. But that is not stated here in the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam just says and Krishna encouraged the laughter as well.
So it's likely to be true, isn't it? Because that's what our Shastra says.
Yeah.
Likely to be true, yes. Yeah.
And I would say, because everybody knew that Duryodhana was so anti, Yudhishthira. And whoever was present were all Yudhishthira's confidants. So when he fell into the water, you can just imagine there must have been a lot of amusement, because as it was, Duryodhana was so against Yudhishthira. So it's only natural, somebody, that is not necessarily liked. Something happens when people laugh.
Yeah.
But Yudhishthira, you see his mood. Don't laugh. Why are you all laughing? He was he's Dharamraj, he didn't want anybody to be humiliated. This is a perfect person. Even an enemy, he didn't want an enemy even humiliated. But Krishna, being the Supreme Lord, he had other plans. Sorry, Nani, you were going to say something?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Prabhupada or... Okay, we can stop there. Srimad Bhagavad Puran ki jai.